Hello, everybody, if you can see and or hear me. So this is the green room for speakers. So if you can turn on your camera and mic.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Simon, you also got in. Good.
I think I just got confused. I sort of was checking out the platform and I could see the counter going down. It's now at 26. When I came here, it was 45. And I thought, oh, the session's already started. There's 45 minutes left.
Oh, dear.
At the time. So I think I'm just flailing around a bit this week. So.
Yeah, to be honest, Simon, that was me. I think I had to add you 2.5 minutes because you hadn't registered properly for the event. It was because the co-located events are slightly separate. You have to tick that box when you're doing the overall registration.
Right. I thought I'd been registered because I was to be on the panel, but yeah.
You're here now, no, that's the main thing.
But it was. I was worried I'd got the timing wrong because that little ticky timer.
I know how that feels, Hillary, being an hour late. Logging into the meeting and thinking, what's going on here? It's not the part of the meeting.
Can I ask if anyone of Hillary, Simon, or Ingrid, if any of you are planning on sharing slides today?
No. I am, yeah.
You are. I know you've done this 100 times already, Hillary. But just double
but my screen's all changed themselves. I don't know. I try again. I think I did it before.
Be worth giving it another go.
Oh yeah, here it is. So I'm sorry, I have to get it because it's on the different screens. So share the desktop. This one here.
Yep.
That's it, isn't it?
It looks fine.
Yeah, looks good.
Perfect. Yeah. So actually, okay, that's fine. Simon, before so in the what will I say it now? So during this presentation, Simon, it's mainly on the results so far of what the RDA work in the EOSC Secretariat, yeah. And then I sent you all the panel discussion. But I will say, and if you're okay with it, was that at the just before the panel, perhaps, because we have the 3 set questions, my last slide before I pass on to Timea in the middle part of the agenda is on data together. And I will very briefly mention the Global Open Science Cloud by CoData. But I think to put it into context, I don't know if Mark is going to talk about it, but maybe just before, at the very beginning of the panel, I'll ask you to just say 2 words about it. Would that be all right with you?
Yeah, I can ad-lib something on that, yeah.
Yeah. As I said, I don't know
who
how
sent
Mark...
the email with the 3 questions. Sorry, I'm in horrible catch-up mode this week.
Hillary did.
Yeah, I did. You want me to send them to you again?
Just so long as I know who sent them.
Yeah, it was me. But I'll just put them in an email. Panel questions again, just to now, just to you.
No, I've got them.
Okay, fine. And while you are all on there, Timea's doing a Mentimeter at the end of our session. One of the questions that we hope the audience will answer is actually the first question that you're all being asked. Okay, so it's good if you want to see about the priority areas and things like that. So you can hopefully I'll be able to capture it and show actually the results of the Menti as well as the question when I flash them up in the discussion session. Yes, that's really it. And Nick, you're organising the whole first piece of it, so I just looked after part 2 and 3.
Yeah. Hi there.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Thanks for joining. So so Hillary, I've sent some. I don't know if you had an intro slide for your sessions. I'll just introduce the topics at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the first session, and then I've sent on Skype. Federico had done a couple of slides on the speakers for your sessions too.
Oh, thanks.
If you want, so we can.
I'll have a look at them now. I just heard.
Yeah, it's just a list of who's speaking.
Oh yeah, no, I have them in mine. Interestingly, yeah,
Okay.
I have first slides. But, I have for session 2 and 3. Yeah, them in a slide set already. I took them from the agenda.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Doug, for that.
That's all right. Okay.
We can see your slides fine, Federico. By the way, just to let you know, it's on your desktop now, but we can see your slides full screen.
Yes,
here.
thank you.
Just to double check. Nick, will you be sharing slides from your device, or are you just using someone else's?
Federico will show his.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Just there, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I just saw Simon's message about not being able to. I thought I hope I registered for this.
I didn't register.
I think I did, but anyway, it's working, which is good.
You did, Sarah. I think I went through and double checked that all the speakers listed were registered, and there was a few to add that you weren't on that list.
Yeah.
Hilary, just a point. Michael Shoop said he might go longer than 10 minutes.
Okay.
As you do.
As you do, yeah.
As you do when you're the commissioner and you can. Yeah.
So I've got 10 minutes at the end of our session. So I hope that might become 5 though. So if we go a couple of minutes over.
I think we're probably all right because I'm not going to take the 10 minutes at the beginning of mine, just 5. And then Maya has 15. I don't know how long Mark is going to go on for. I'm actually kind of worried if he's going to turn up at all.
He is registered and he has a link to the and he has speaker privileges, so he's able to get into the green room where we are now. So
it's very early for him.
It's all up to him now.
Yeah.
I kind of factored in that the first session might go a bit. I'd like to see your timekeeping on this one, Nick.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I know.
Yeah,
it'll be hard timekeeping. I actually think there's going to be a lot of questions about things like the task forces as well. So
yeah.
Because it's all quite new. So it might be worth if we are able to go 5 or 10 minutes over.
Yeah. We have a little bio break scheduled in after Timea's presentation because we feel that people might need that then.
Yeah.
Even if it's in the middle of the session, we'll just manage it.
Mm-hmm. And I need to leave after those opening talks, I'm afraid, for a SUNET meeting. But I mean, I can join that a little bit late if we end up running over. It's not a problem.
Okay.
No.
Oh, look, it's Farrah Fawcett.
I knew it. Should I stay on top?
I'm going to take a screen grab so I can send it to the WhatsApp.
No.
Timea and a bouncy hair.
You know them all between Judy Jetson and whatever it was. I said to Natalie, can I call you Judy from now on? And she's like, don't you dare. Judy Jetson would be okay.
She said she'd put that top on specially for you.
She did, yeah. Do you know why? Because there's a memory to it. Because I was just saying, thank God we made some memories. Simon will remember this memory as well. Actually, we were in Vienna at the launch of the Open Science Cloud, and after all the meetings were finished, of course, as you do, we went a little bit of shopping, and we first laid our eyes on that jumper. Then
oh, really?
Buy it then, but she tried it on. Yes, and that's when we had a. And so she says, I remember, and we had a very nice evening, actually. So I remember you went ice skating. That was
nice.
Yeah, there was a lovely Christmas market, wasn't there? And we were drinking these lovely hot punches.
Oh, was that at the launch of EOSC?
Yeah.
I remember that.
It was lovely. Yeah, it was very nice. Fun memories of that trip.
Yeah, it was nice. Well, it's nice to be able to travel, isn't it? We all say mournfully.
So Simon, are you COVID clear now, or what's the story? Are you still waiting for your negative test?
I'm clear. I mean, I've sort of been symptom free since the end of last week.
And were you feeling really bad?
I had its moments. It was pretty unpleasant. Yeah. I mean, it was what was funny, as it were, looking back on it, as it were, was just as it was getting bad, then obviously my organism kicked in and and I got better relatively quickly. But I think there's a moment when I was beginning to get a little bit worried.
Yeah.
You know, low oximeter readings, a little bit of congestion in the lungs.
How long were you knocked out?
It was sort of 12 days in total. There was sort of, I was actually dreaming about this last night. There's four days of sort of rising symptoms, 4 days when it's pretty nasty, and then 4 days getting better.
Wow.
And when I say getting better, I mean I was symptom free from Thursday last week. No, by which I mean, you know, the lungs had cleared and no temperature, you know, no fever. But I mean, it's been slow going, to be honest. I still feel a bit knocked out.
And can you take any medicine when you're doing? What do you do? Nothing.
To be honest, there's not much you can do. You take paracetamol for the fever. I'm asthmatic anyway, so taking asthma medication is encouraged, and you know, there's for treatment, even with people without asthma, taking the steroidal treatments for asthma, the puffers, is one of the treatments people can do. But to be frank, there's not a lot, you know, and even the antivirals. I mean, I wasn't on any antivirals. I was just at home, didn't go to hospital or anything. But in the discussion, the antivirals aren't that effective in any way. So.
And do you have any idea how you got it?
No. I mean, it's really, really stupid, isn't it?
But what are you allowed to do?
I mean, you know, all I've done is gone to local shops.
Wow.
So it must have been at some point either the local little supermarket or shop or whatever. Which I think just shows, one, how out of control it got in Paris, and two, how much more infectious the new variants are. The crazy thing is, I had an appointment for for a vaccine a few weeks ago, and then that was changed because the French High Authority of Health changed its ruling on what age you could be for the AstraZeneca one, and having just been inside the age range, I was then kicked out of the age range, so I had to cancel that appointment. And then 2 weeks later, I got COVID. So
wow. So you have to wait now, don't you? Have to wait a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I've got to wait 3 months before I can get a vaccine now, which is a.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
And my doctor was saying as well, so sometime between 3 or 6 months, you know. Also, I don't want to wait 6 months because I want my vaccine passport.
Don't we all?
You need to get it in time for
Seoul, yeah.
And Sarah, you just need
Thomas,
to go
all
back
of
to the
this
UK
K
and get
food,
it
K data.
in Europe.
Yeah, I'm gonna go home, not to get the vaccine, but just because it's gonna be so long since I've been, if I actually try and wait for things to be able to travel without quarantine. So just gonna suck it up, bother my dad for a couple of weeks.
But it's not hotel quarantine, is it?
No, I'll quarantine at his house, which would probably be driving me more crazy than being in a hotel for a week.
Well, that's the thing. Ireland has put in this hotel quarantine, forced hotel quarantine.
Oh, forced? You can't go to somebody's house?
Oh, no. You have to go to the
wow.
hotel.
Okay, that's really hard.
But to be honest, I think it makes absolute sense. I mean, it's what the Aussies and the Kiwis did. You know.
Yeah.
To be frank, I just don't think you can trust people. And so if you're going to be serious about it, then you need to have hotel quarantine.
As well, in Ireland, it doesn't have the capacity to deal with if there was a massive spike, whereas in the UK, the infrastructure is better. I mean, the hospital, there is, as bad as it can get sometimes, it is better than most of the smaller countries. So I guess the restrictions kind of reflect how well they're prepared in general, I think, for these sort of health situations.
Popped in to see if all is okay, but if you're chatting about pandemics, then I presume everything is otherwise.
We're all fine, filling the time.
The usual icebreaker these days.
Okay, I'll drop out again, but I'm sure we'll be back later as an attendee, if not to help see you all.
Good.
I think we're still waiting. Oh, so just on the chat here, that Klaus has just joined, who was just on screen.
Hi, Klaus. On the panel later on, aren't you?
You're muted, Klaus, if you're speaking.
He was, but we didn't hear him.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
I know there's quite not a long list, but more than people who are in the room at the moment, list of speakers. But can I ask, who's the first person sort of saying hello to everybody and introducing them?
So that's me.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm not sure if you've been to any of the sessions during the week, but so you see the little timer there that's counting down to 11 minutes and however many seconds. So we don't get any or anything. It's the session just starts at that when the clock gets down to 0. So so the session starts automatically recording. So that would be worth flagging up maybe in the first when you're just saying hello to everybody, just so people are aware. I can put it in the chat and the usual sort of housekeeping notifications to people for the first few minutes, because obviously people who come in a little bit later don't get to see the previous chat. So just to keep people, to make sure everyone is on the same page. And it also might be worth maybe sort of padding for like 4 minutes or 45 seconds to a minute while people come in, and also because the countdown timer is based on the clock for your local device. So if your local device is out by 30 seconds or a minute, then you won't get into the room where people might be. So yeah, it's just the kind of normal sort of housekeeping stuff. Just make sure everyone's
what have you been doing for questions? Have you been asking them to add into the Q&A?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the chat or the Q&A function. With the Q&A, people can like upvote and answer in the text, and obviously the chat just functions like a normal chat.
Okay.
And you'll see as well, actually, for everybody, for people who haven't been into the sessions yet this week, there's on the far right-hand side of the screen, you should see it says mod. That's the moderator chat. So that would be for any of the people who have who are presenters, who have access to the green room where we are, and for Juno support staff. There's a few Juno support staff sort of in the background today as well. So that would be sort of a private chat for moderators, chairs, and support staff.
Okay.
And Hilary, you will guide us through the session. You will ask us the 3 questions, one after the other.
Yes. So, and then I'll ask you all to give a point. I was saying just before, Klaus, that Timea, at the end of the previous block of talks, Timea is doing a Mentimeter, which is, and one of the questions that we're asking the audience, hopefully, to answer, is actually the first question that I have asked all of you, which is the one on the priority areas and prioritization. So we'll also, it'd be nice to see what the audience answers. At the very beginning of the session, because in my presentation, at the beginning of the second block, if you like, chunk, I will just give a highlight as to why this is all happening, the EOSC Secretariat. And my last slide is about the Data Together initiative. And of course, about the Global Open Science Cloud that CoData is taking forward. Simon will say a couple of words on that just at the beginning of the panel, because he doesn't get a chance to talk about it before, and I want to make sure it's put into context in that. At that point, Klaus, if you have anything to add from the GoPair perspective before we kick off the questions, please, I can nudge you if you think you want to say something. No.
Not necessarily, no.
All right, well, we'll see how it goes, but of course, I will also mention, of course, when I talk about the Data Together, that both Simon and you are there, and Ingrid, of course, as in representation of the other 4 organizations, or 3 organizations in the Data Together initiative. Okay, great. And then, yeah, we'll work through the questions as a panel. I will put them up on the screen, but the best thing to do is not to screen share too much in this particular platform. So I will put them up for a little bit, and I'll take them down and put them back up for each time when we move through, and we'll sort of take it from there and see how it works through. Thanks. There's Mark.
Ryan, how many people have signed up for the event, for this workshop?
I shared that number with Federico this morning, and I'm forgetting it. So it's going to be 2 seconds. I'll check my email.
Is it 130 or something? I think.
Yeah, that rings a bell. I'll just
135. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Oh, don't worry. Just say over 130.
That was it.
Mhm.
Also, you'd be able to see on the unfortunately, we don't get a live count of who is in the room at the time. But if you see on the bottom right of the screen, sort of under the window, there's a little silhouette of sort of two figures. If you hit that, that brings up a list of the people who have registered them and who have joined the event. Unfortunately, it doesn't say if people if someone comes in and leaves again, their name stays on the list, but it gives you a sort of idea who has joined on the day.
Okay. Thank you.
And Hilary, will you ask someone of us directly, or is it always to every question one after the other?
Yeah, no, I was going to, well, I'll do the one question and then ask you to sort of answer it from your perspective, as I said. So I'd like to hear everyone. I figured that, you know, if we keep the discussion short, it's 15 minutes for each question, more or less. And, you know, yeah, because it's just, how many of us on the panel? Well, I just check. I can't remember now. Well, I'm not thinking.
5 people, Hilary.
Five,
So,
yes.
no,
So I think.
3 minutes for everyone for every question.
Yeah, so it's Randecker, Ingrid, Simon, Mark, and Klaus. Yes, that's pretty good. Oh, there's Carol. Hi, Carol. Nice to see you.
I said hi, but I had my audio off. Now, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hopefully you can hear me too. I've just seen an email from Michelle that he's tried to join the session and it's failed. So
okay.
how
How
do we get the link out of Juno? I always just click on it.
The URL, yeah. I'll
just
double check
the URL for that page. I'll
Yeah.
just bring up the program.
I will
The one
double
that you
check.
see on the top of your screen now, Sarah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's exactly the same. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I'll just copy that. I'll resend that to him.
I'm checking access right now to see if there's any.
Okay.
So what was?
So it's Michelle Scoop.
Yeah, he's got all relevant.
Is he using the same email? Sarah, can you pass on in the chat there what email he's just contacted?
Yeah, the email, it's at ec.europa.eu. I'll just put it in like moderator chat.
Yeah, he has all relevant access. I've refreshed. If you don't mind asking him to refresh.
Okay. I'll put maybe try refreshing too.
Thanks, Sarah.
If it is his first time logging as well, it might be worth just double checking that he's using Chrome. That's the kind of.
Okay.
We had it. I think Federico had a test with him yesterday, and everything was okay.
Oh yeah, because you've done a test in the morning.
I'm using Safari. Is that a problem?
It doesn't work as well with the platform. Do you want to test? Are you sharing screen with slides? You might want to test that. Make sure that nothing goes awry.
Let's check. I'll put on my
Sorry,
screen
we have
sharing.
3 and a bit minutes for going live. Do we want to delay a little bit if we don't have everybody, or are we?
Does it only?
No, it's fine. I think it'll be fine.
Okay.
Does it only show your desktop, or does it also show other desktops?
You have multiple windows, so you can choose the full application, like full desktop.
And where do you do that?
So the third icon in. So you've got your video, audio, and then you've got screen share. So if you try that screen share,
allow to observe your screen, and then you say allow. Yeah.
And then you should have like multiple tabs. If you've got your slides open.
No.
Maybe open.
Oh, I have my slides open. I have not multiple tabs.
Carol.
Okay.
Yes.
You could send. Why don't you send your slides to Federico?
They're showing now, Carol.
Just real quick, everyone, this is Hannah from Juno. If you're in Safari, you don't have the option to share like application.
But it's sharing your desktop. Now they're sharing. Now it's showing it.
It's sharing and it's full screen, so it's fine.
And now it's not full screen anymore.
And here's Michelle.
Now it's not full screen. No, now you're in presenter.
Then it's just showing the desktop. I understand how it works.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah. Hello, Carol. Hello, all colleagues. In the end, I could join. Thank you, Sarah, for sending the link.
So Michelle, we'll start. I'll give a very brief introduction, and then we'll start off with you. We go live. Ryan told me when the counter at the bottom right goes to 0, and it just automatically goes live. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 2 minutes.
Will you animate the slides? I mean, or I sent mine early this morning. So
yes, we can. Yeah. Federico can share his screen.
I would prefer that, and then I can just say, please, next slide, and so on.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Carol, if you want Federico to do that as well for you, then
no. I prefer to do it myself.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. As you can see there was just about a minute left to go. So, so we advise people who aren't sort of presenting or planning to speak at the time just to keep your microphone, your camera off. But that just you'll go off screen if your mic and camera is off, but you're still there, still attending the meeting. So as I said, Nick, the session will start when you kind of get down to 0, but it's worth just giving a minute or two for people to sort of
come in.
Exactly. Yeah. So best of luck. I'll just turn my mic and camera off there now. But again, we can use the moderator chat to, if anything.
Perfect.
Good luck, Michelle.
Good luck to you too, Carol.
Hello, good afternoon, or good morning, good evening. My name is Nicholas Ferguson, and I work for Trust IT Services and an EC-funded project called EOSC In today's workshop, we'll be looking at an interesting topic of the European Open Science Cloud and a particular topic of the priorities for the EOSC, as we call it, and international alignment, the importance of international alignment for the European Open Science Cloud and around the topic of open science. So we have over 140 people joining us for this session. So I'd like to welcome you all. And just as this session is global, so is open science and so is open innovation. And these are the two of the main principles around the European Open Science Cloud. It's now entered into its important implementation phase, and we've seen the establishment of the EOSC Association at the end of 2020. And in today's workshop, we'll be looking at some of the objectives of the association and how they're going to be addressing some of the challenges that are faced. In addition, we'll be asking the key question, how can the EOSC internationalize better? And we'll be hearing from an interesting study which is being carried out by Hilary Hanaho and her team at RDA to explore collaboration points between the European Open Science Cloud and the RDA working groups. We'll also be discussing a number of calls to action and future steps. So the session lasts from now until 12:45. We're broken up into 3 different sessions, basically covering those topics. The first session now I'll introduce. The second session will be hosted by Hilary, where she'll be going over some of the findings from her study that has been funded through the EOSC Secretariat co-creation. And then in the third session, we'll have a roundtable, again hosted by RDA, where we have some of the key players in this topic. So this first session, I'm joined by Michel Schub from the European Commission and DG RTD. Also, Carol Leuben, the president of the EOSC Association, and he will be giving an overview of some of the EOSC vision, the pointers around the EOSC vision and the global, within a global, how it sits within a global ecosystem. And then we'll be hearing from Sarah Jones, from Giant and director of the EOSC Association, on the challenges and the formation of advisory groups which will chart a course for the future of the EOSC. So with that, I'll hand over to Michel, who will be giving us an overview of what has been learned during the implementation phase in the previous 2 years. Over to you, Michel. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and hello to everybody. As you know, my name is Michel Schub. I'm with the European Commission. I'm in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation, and my work is very much on open science and the European Open Science Cloud. We did actually hold an EOSC co-located event in Helsinki. For those who have good memories, this was in RDA Plenary 15. But that was a year and a half ago, so I'd like to thank RDA and the EOSC Secretariat for giving me this opportunity to update you on EOSC. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in my talk, I'd like to give you some I will mention the latest policy motivation behind the EOSC. I will also explain what will be what is EOSC in a nutshell, how it is implemented. We have a two-stage approach. What will be the strategic orientations for the next 10 years? I will give a short example of EOSC in action, and finally point out few lessons learned during the last 2 years. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. A specificity in Europe is that research and innovation is not only tackled at national level. Actually, it's a shared responsibility between the member states and the European Union. So the main issues we have to address are to reduce fragmentation, to leverage investments at national and European levels, but also to ensure a better flow of knowledge across national borders. And this is exactly where the EOSC comes into play. EOSC is a pilot action of what we call the European Research Area, and it shall enable the sharing of research knowledge as early as possible in the research process. It's also about providing the data necessary to monitor open science practices in Europe. EOSC is also supporting the digital agenda of the European Union. It's recognized as one of the data space of the European data strategy. And it will play its role to pool research data, to improve their interoperability, and to provide seamless access to storage and computing capacities in Europe. We also have a new regulation to help all the European countries to recover from the damages by the coronavirus pandemic, economic damages and social damages. So it will be very interesting to see in the future how the member states intend to fund EOSC relevant infrastructures as part of their national plans for recovery and resilience. Next slide, please. What is EOSC? EOSC can be seen as a process, as an infrastructure, and as an ecosystem. As a process, EOSC embeds open science practices in European and national policies and initiatives. It is intended as a game changer for the sharing and the exploitation of publicly funded research outputs, not just in Europe, but also internationally, not just research data, but also publications, software, and codes, not only within a discipline, but also between disciplines and also with society at large. This is really important if we want to secure trust in science. EOSC is also a federated infrastructure. It will enable new possibilities for the researchers to store, share, curate their own data, but also to discover, access, combine, and process data from other researchers. And as a core element of this federation, EOSC will promote minimum protocols to implement the FAIR principles and deploy gradually what we can call a research data commons. Not the least, EOSC is an ecosystem, and it's a crowded one, believe me. It concerns many different stakeholders, from policymakers to researchers, operators of research infrastructures, software engineers, data scientists, trainers, and all their respective organizations. And this is not only in one country, it's across the 27 member states and other associated countries. So overall, we can say EOSC is a complex and dynamic ecosystem. Next slide, please. Okay, just a few words about the implementation. We have a two-stage approach for the rollout of the Science Cloud. A first phase, mainly preparatory, has taken place till end of last year. It was driven by a roadmap with 6 areas of development, and each of these areas have been addressed by about 50 consortia funded by the Horizon 2020 program. In addition, an EOSC governance was also set up, mainly to prepare for the second EOSC phase. By comparison, if you look at the right part of the slide, phase 2 is longer in duration, about 10 years. It will become increasingly stakeholder-driven. It will be implemented in the context of a European partnership, following what we call a strategic agenda, which this time has been co-developed with the entire EOSC community. Next slide, please. Okay, the current phase 2 capitalizes on the work of the previous governance. And in particular, the EOSC Executive Board, which was running until December last year, has coordinated a huge stock-taking and drafting exercise during the last 2 years. The results are really exemplary. And what is shown on this slide is only the tip of the iceberg. So I will not go into the details, but you will find there latest information on EOSC rules of participation, the minimum viable EOSC. It gives a snapshot on policies and investment in Europe of relevance to the EOSC. You can find many recommendations on how to achieve interoperability of research outputs, how to develop fair and open science skills, how to deal with identity and access control in complex commons. You will also find metrics for fair data, sustainability options. I mean, the list is quite long, and all these reports are public and accessible via DOIs. Next slide, please. So now let's give an example of EOSC in practice, especially in the field of fair and data sharing against the SARS-CoV-2. The current pandemic, we can say, has brought a real test case for the EOSC. Just 1 year ago, the EU leaders have agreed on an action plan called ERA versus Corona. And one of the actions was to establish a European COVID-19 data platform. The main motivation was, of course, to accelerate discovery and to inform public health policy. Now we are just 1 year later, by a few days, actually. And EMBL-EBI, the operator of the platform, they are extremely pleased to report over 4 million web requests and more than 170,000 users from many countries. So achieving this success was possible because first, the demand was high, the commitment was strong, the connectivity was in place, and the key nodes of the federated platform were already well established. Still, I would say that the main reason for success might be the cooperation which took place at many levels. The EOSC governance, for instance, has played its role to stimulate national coordination teams. And the RDA as well has been very reactive by setting up a COVID-19 RDA working group, which has now delivered very detailed guidelines on data sharing under a health emergency. Next slide, please. So what are the lessons we have learned over the last 3 years? If we look at phase 1, EOSC has driven a wide research and innovation agenda. The grant approach that we have used in Horizon 2020 has been quite successful to prototype the EOSC. It has allowed us to engage hundreds of research institutions in Europe and to investigate a wide range of EOSC questions. Now, with the second phase, we want to streamline these results. We will have to transition from this project-based approach to a more stakeholder-driven approach. And we think that the new EOSC partnership will provide a much wider framework for convergence, not only at EU level, but also at national and institutional levels. And clearly, the EOSC Association will play a strategic role to engage with multiple EOSC stakeholders and ensure a user-driven EOSC. Another key challenge we have to go through is to move from prototyping to the consolidation and operation of the EOSC. And for this purpose, it's likely that the Commission will increasingly use public procurements in the future. Last slide, please. Okay, this is about EOSC in the international context of open science. To conclude, I would like to emphasize 3 messages. First, I would say that the EOSC challenge goes beyond linking datasets, combining services, federating infrastructures, or even aligning policies. It's first about engaging people and organizations. That's really the main lessons we have learned. Now, second message is that the success will largely depend on a change of culture among the researchers towards more openness. And the funders have probably a role to play there. Regarding the European Commission, we will use the new Horizon Europe program to foster open access, data management along the FAIR principles, as well as incentives and rewards. And finally, let me recall that EOSC is global in scope. even if European by focus. And the project RDA for EOSC is a concrete instrument to support the future internationalization of EOSC. I'm sure that Hilary will tell you more about this in the follow-up session. With this, I'd like to thank you very much, and over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Hello there, sorry about that. I had a couple of problems turning on my microphone. So thank you very much, Michelle. That was very interesting and a really nice overview on some of the background work that's been carried out over the last 2 years. And our next two speakers, Carol Leuben and Sarah Jones, were key people in the first phase of the implementation of the EOSC. Carol is now joining us. He's going to talk a little bit about, probably reflect on some of the things that Carol mentioned, and importantly, take us through the vision of the EOSC and its relation to the international community as well. So, Carol, thank you very much. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Nick. First checking, can you see my slides? Nick?
Yes, we can. Yeah,
okay,
we can see,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak here. And we have not tuned our presentations, so there's going to be overlap with Michelle, but in completely different words from a completely different person, and thus with additional insights, I would say. As Michelle already said, the EOSC is going to be a web of fair data and related services. Sometimes also said enabling open science commons is the abbreviation EOSC. I coined this about 2 years ago. Maybe open is too wide. Maybe we should say enabling fair science or society commons would even be better. Anyway, I'll come to that in my talk. It's going to be a federation of relevant existing and future data sources, a virtual space where the science producers and consumers can come together, and all the stakeholders can come together, open-ended in range, content and services. That implies already that it's not ending with Europe and it's not ending with the services we can offer here. But it's going to meet all the European data requirements. At least that's the way we start, and I hope that's the way we can continue in the future. And it will be done, as I will explain, in interaction with other regions of the world. You can also see EOSC, and here there is an important difference between EOSC and the EOSC ecosystem. I'll come to that, as the data infrastructures that are a twin sister or twin brother of the European e-infrastructures. So the e-infrastructures offer the store, compute, and connect services, while the EOSC as data infrastructure is going to offer the connection of the data. The total of these two is what I would call the EOSC ecosystem. Sure, the e-infrastructures have to be part of the EOSC ecosystem, otherwise the system is not going to work. It's a matter of terminology, whether you call EOSC the data infrastructure part or not, but this is the way I define it. The overall vision is given here, and this is the overall vision, as it says in the text upper left, of the EOSC ecosystem. So this is not the overall vision of what I would call the EOSC, which is going to be the web of fair data, and this is what the association is going to concentrate on initially. But the association will be stimulating the whole EOSC ecosystem, thus reducing fragmentation, enabling interoperability, supporting open science in the widest sense in the digital market, offer researchers digital resources, seamless access, stimulate the emergence of competitive cloud sectors, and give Europe a global lead in the research data management. But of course, EOSC as a data infrastructure cannot give Europe the global lead in itself. We need all the stakeholders for that. We are developing EOSC based on a number of guiding principles. The overarching principle, and I think it was implicitly already mentioned by Michelle, is that we do this for the research. Some people say for the researchers. well, we're not working for the individuals, we're working for the work these individuals do. So I tend to say the overarching principle is that we develop EOSC for the research and thus for the help of the researchers. As has been said, and I would like to repeat, it has to be multi-stakeholder. EOSC will only succeed if all these stakeholders will be involved. Has to be as open as possible. Sometimes it cannot be completely open with respect to the data for legal reasons, for privacy reasons, for IP reasons, but as most as possible. And many of the research, of course, is complying with that as open as possible, but it can always be fair. So it has to comply with the FAIR principles as far as they have been developed and as far as you can implement them. It's going to be a federation of infrastructures, as I already said, including the e-infrastructures. And an important factor compared to what we have been able to see in many of these integrated approaches is that we will strive for, and it's not easy, machine actionability. Machine actionability goes further than machine readability, and machine readability goes further than being able to read the PDF file or to take on board the CSV file. I try to explain this as follows. I can read Polish, but I do not understand the Polish. So I cannot read Polish text and understand that. So a machine can take into itself a file. It doesn't mean that it understands the file. It needs to understand the file in order to be machine readable. And it needs to be able what to do with it, all the actions that are possible in order to be machine actionable. As Michel said, the association was set up to advance this European Open Science Cloud, and the more specific aims, apart from the overarching global aim, of course, is to provide a single voice for the representation of the broader stakeholders in the whole community of Europe, and to promote alignment with the European Union on the research policy and priorities through the STRIA, as already been mentioned by Michel. And ultimately, in the long run, of course, it's aimed to be having a seamless access to data through interoperable services that address the entire life cycle of research, from discovery to storage, from management, analysis, and reuse. This sounds beautiful, and this is not being done overnight. So this is not being finished in 10 years' time even. This is the time frame we have for the MOU with the European Commission. In my view, if 50% of the relevant data would be as fair as possible 20 years from now, I would be happy. And by relevant data, I mean the data that are considered relevant by the researchers. Data, publications, code deemed relevant by the researchers. The status of this association is that we have been formed, that it has been formed in the middle of last year. It is now having a royal charter in Belgium. It includes the national, regional, and European stakeholders in the EOS ecosystem, such the research performing, research funding, and research service providing organization. And it's about to sign a co-program partnership or an MOU on a co-program partnership with the Commission. We have a board of directors that have been appointed as of the 17th of December last year, and several of these serve 3, others serve 2, and others serve 1 year. This is to get a staggered system. New directors will all serve for a period of 3 years, and there will be places available in this board every year. At this moment in time, we have roughly 110 observers plus members or members plus observers. If you want to join, look at the EOSC website. Rules of participation, we would like to keep them as minimum as possible with respect to the rights and obligations in order for many parties to be able to join. They are set to encourage a wider participation rather than to exclude people, and many of the rules will provide encouragement rather than impose restrictions. But somebody has to be responsible for looking after the rules, and this will be one of the tasks of the association. The association is starting with trying to establish what we call first minimum viable EOSC. Some people already say EOSC is there. Depends on your definition, on whether you think the core is already there. I think we have a long way to go to really say EOSC has been formed to a certain extent. But if you define EOSC as the web of fair data, like the World Wide Web, there is no one date in time where the EOSC was not there 10 minutes ago and is there 10 minutes later, or was not there a week ago and is there a week later. As Michel rightfully pointed out, it's a process, it's a development where more and more stakeholders will join the party. And this party will start with a core federating a set of data infrastructures, and being able to do the exchange with the outside world to offer some services. These data will be fair, open data initially, and this is the very first start. As we said, the data can have to be fair, all of them. What will the association be doing? Develop and govern this federating core. Manage or have managed is a better term. The compliance framework, the trusted certifications, the authorization and authentication infrastructure, the PID policies, not commanding PID policies from the top, but being able to combine the different PID policies. It will do outreach to the stakeholders. This is an example of this outreach, by the way, in this RDA event. We will monitor the services and transactions taking place, manage the EOSC trademark, and definitely contribute to the Horizon Europe policy, because the Commission is committing a sizable sum in the order of 500 million for the coming 7 years in EOSC-related calls, and we have committed as an association to the same in kind. As Michel already mentioned, the data portal for the COVID is a good example of where things come together. This is the COVID-19 data portal run by EMBL EBI. It offers open and rapid access to data tools and workflows. It's built on open standards. It's aligned with national infrastructures. This slide is taken from their board meeting, and they also themselves say it will be aligned with the developing EOSC. If you look at the Dutch contribution to that, the Dutch say the outcome of tomorrow's COVID patients is strongly determined by having access to the data of the patients today. And this is not only the biological data or the virus data. So we have to collect and find the right data to make them accessible and to reuse them. This is non-trivial. And currently, many data collection initiatives have been taking place over the world. In the Netherlands, Health RI will provide this overview, and we'll see that it works in conjunction with this European standard. But if I ask Health RI what is the status, they say, well, there's a fragmentation of data, of images, of samples in the healthcare and the clinical research. There's a lack of standardization in the care and in the research part. The reliability, quality, and the reusability of data is problematic, and the ethical and legal framework is not always clear and sometimes even obstructive, showing that this portal and this network of viral data and biological data has done and is doing a great job, but it is not the solution for all of it yet. So we have to be able to combine the clinical data with the biological data, which we are not able at this moment, not even to combine the clinical data between the clinics. Now, EOSC is going to help in this respect, of course, but EOSC, as Michel rightfully pointed out, is not aiming of only playing at the European stage, because it would not help the researchers if they could only interact with other European researchers. At this moment, all countries already have access to the EOSC association. They can become observers there, every organization from every country. Service providers from third countries, being not European or associated countries, can already participate in EOSC, but will of course have to adhere to the rules of participation and the applicable legislation in the countries, in Europe, sorry. The EOSC will work, of course, with other regional initiatives towards common goals for open science, driving the global convergence, not only the convergence in Europe, in the countries or in the organizations, as Michel pointed out, on standards in support of implementing Open Science Commons. And I think the Global Open Commons Interest Group of RDA could play a helpful role here in building the right network, as can CODATA and the World Data System and GoFair. With that, I would like to suggest let's co-create EOSC together, and thank you for your attention here today. Back to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carol. That was great. Really nice overview and some good links at the end in terms of collaboration in the future with international communities. So we've got a few questions in the chat and in the Q&A, which we'll address after Sarah's presentation, which will look at the priorities of EOSC of the EOSC Association and the EOSC and the formation of advisory groups around these topics. And then we'll deal with a couple of questions at the end. So if you have any questions, stick them in the Q&A, please. And I'll hand over to Sarah. Thank you.
Good luck, Sarah.
Thanks, Carol, and thanks very much, Nick. So this is going to be quite a kind of practical talk. What we've been doing at the moment is setting up advisory groups and task forces within the association, and I want to really just bring you up to speed on where we are with that. So for those of you who are familiar with EOSC and the previous governance, we did have a series of working groups, and these EOSC Association advisory groups and task forces are a continuation of that. It's a structure that's permitted by our association statutes that allows members to really help steer the implementation of EOSC. And those groups, the way we envisage it, they should be liaising with the different implementation projects and offering feedback and advice. So it's a way to get that community input into the building of EOSC. We also hope that these groups will identify strategic gaps and areas for investment, because we will be updating the strategic research and innovation agenda. So they should be feeding information back to the board, and there should be a two-way conversation, really, so as a community we can see what needs to happen with EOSC and ensure that we put the necessary steps in place to allow that. Association members can propose and lead groups, but externals can also be members. And I think that's really important because of some of the discussions around the international engagement, but also because sometimes the expertise may not be within EOSC or within the association. So how we're convening the groups, we proposed a set of topics based on the previous governance. So based on the outcomes, Michelle showed you the whole range of recommendations and documents that had come out of the previous governance. Some of the groups are about continuing that work, going into the implementation phase. Some of those documents had identified gaps. So we have groups around kind of developing that work further. And we ran a community consultation on our initial proposals, and we got, some topics people didn't think were important. There were other ones like long-term preservation that came up as a priority, which we hadn't identified. So we made a revision and we opened a call for applications. We received a huge number, 255 applications. So that's what we've been busy with the past few weeks. And the way we are intending to draft the charters for these groups, we've identified a small team of coordinators per topic, so 4 people. And we've also tried to manage the number of people drafting the charters by applying the rule that any individual should only be involved in one charter. There should be one priority topic, which is their main area of expertise. The net result is that that's brought the numbers down to about 10 or 25 people per group, which I think is a much more realistic number for collectively drafting the Charter of Work. But that isn't necessarily the membership of the group. We did have a number of people who weren't interested in the charters, but they do want to consider being members of the group. So we will have a secondary call for membership in May, and then we will figure out with the groups what kind of size and scale of groups we should have and who should be the members. But I'll touch on that again towards the end. We've, from the board of directors within EOSC, we've appointed a director as a liaison at the advisory group level. So within the advisory groups, we have a number of task forces. So Suzanne Dumichel is looking after the implementation of EOSC, which is really task forces around work that's really quite mature already. Ignacio is leading on the technical challenges, myself on the metadata and data quality, because that's the kind of fair aspects. Wilhelm, who comes from the library community, is leading on research careers and curricula, and Bob on sustaining EOSC. And the directors are really there to act as a liaison between the advisory groups, task forces, and the board, so we get that two-way conversation, but also to help facilitate collaboration across the task forces, because sometimes there may be overlapping remits, or it's good to ensure we have that kind of discussion at a broader level. So these are the kind of 13 topics we came up with overall. As you can see, there are 5 advisory groups which are highlighted in bold, and within those there are a number of different topics we're addressing. Some of them, as I mentioned, are already at quite an advanced stage. So the PIDs, for example, we have a good PID policy in EOSC. We're now at the stage of implementing that and ensuring we have all the relevant services. Other ones, like developing the infrastructure for quality research software, is at a more kind of newer stage. So there's more work to do within that charter, I'd say. And some are just kind of thorny issues which we've been struggling with, and we don't have a necessarily good answer, like defining funding models for EOSC. So in terms of how the charters will be drafted, we're hoping that the coordinators, most of them have accepted already, so we're starting to put the coordinators in touch. We're hoping that they'll come together to discuss the plans and then reach out to the volunteers, and over the coming few weeks draft the charters for each of these task forces. I mentioned that we've got more manageable size groups now, fairly smallish groups. You can see on the right, around half of the task forces have around kind of 10 people, which I think is quite a good size for drafting something collectively. The other half have around 20, which, you know, could be too big, but hopefully the work can be structured in a way that people focus on different elements. And as I said, we're hoping that over the coming 3 weeks, we can get those charters drafted and then put them out to the community. The basic template we have for these task forces is that they describe, it's quite like the RDA template, I took inspiration from that. They describe the main aims of the task force, what it is that it will be focusing on, describe the core activities, so specifying a work plan and a set of activities, the key outputs and outcomes, and a timeline for these. The different task forces may have different durations. We're anticipating 12 to 24 months for the different task forces, but it will depend on, you know, the work that they feel needs to be done. We also think it's important that they specify their working methodology, because it's important that there's good open comms and engagement with the stakeholder community at large. And identify dependencies, which may be between task forces, or it might be, you know, awaiting inputs from certain projects or engagement with certain communities. And then the final point here, which I think is probably the most thorny issue, because we want to be open and inclusive, but it has to be manageable, is the membership. And we've asked the task forces to describe the proposed membership composition and size. So what competencies are needed to deliver the work within that task force, and how balance will be brought if there's certain stakeholder communities that need to have, you know, more representation than others, if there is an issue in terms of numbers. So who will be the task force members is still to be defined. We were surprised at how many applications we got for drafting the charters, and we're conscious we still have to have a call for members, that there may be, you know, a big number that we're dealing with. Now that could possibly be fine. RDA is an open community. There's no limits on membership of groups. But we do want to take the people who are coordinating the groups and chairing them, you know, will have a view. So we need to think about what's a realistic size. If necessary, a selection will be made. And we have some thoughts about potential selection criteria. Obviously, we've selected 4 coordinators per group, and we applied roughly this set of criteria. We wanted to make sure we had people who had the relevant skills for that task force area. Obviously, prioritizing association members and observers. And this notion, prioritizing people who add value to EOSC, we were very conscious that we wanted to try and widen the community and not have the same voices all the time. So we tried to bring in people who are newer to EOSC. Also tried to ensure we had research community inputs. I think that's critical because that's the key stakeholder who's going to be using EOSC. And then trying to bring balance. So we tried to bring gender and country balance. We didn't focus as much on things like career stage and the stakeholder category or what kind of member they were, but those are things we may want to balance. You know, we might want to say that no individual organization can have more than 5 members across all the task forces. So these are the things that could be applied if we need to do selections. In terms of the chairing of the task forces, we're asking each task force to make a suggestion themselves. So any member could volunteer to chair and be proposed by the group, and then it would be the board that kind of agrees or appoints both the members and the chairs. Our criteria here, we would hope to have 2 chairs, 1 male, 1 female for balance. And we would like, again, because EOSC is open and inclusive, we would like to try and have balance across all of the task force chairs, not have, you know, 10 of them coming from Germany or, you know, all from one certain community, like all the infra people. So the timeline we're working to, most of the coordinators have accepted already. Today was the deadline we gave, that they'll help with the charters. We're hoping over the coming 3 weeks that they'll be written. And then we'd like in mid-May to publish the charters, run some public webinars to get community discussion, and opening that second call for members. Again, like the charter drafting, which is 3 weeks, we thought 3 weeks to be open for the membership call. Potentially it could be less. Might manage with 2 there, but then we would need to process those applications, and I assume that will take a few weeks, certainly if selections are needed as well. But we're hoping to have the group set up by July, and actively working and collaborating with the projects. And I think that was my last slide. Hopefully I've caught us up a little bit of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great. Thank you. Very nice overview, and very interesting that the different types of stakeholders that you're looking to involve in the advisory groups, and the fact that this is something that will involve the community. So I think we have time just for a couple of questions. There's not too many questions coming in, but I think we could have, so there's one that's come in, well, a couple come in about sustainability from Victoria Dominguez del Angel and Kees van Bush. Apologies for my pronunciation. And really the questions around here, one from Victoria is, how do you guarantee the sustainability of services and not competition between services? While Kees asks about what the business model going forward. Will the EOSC provide stable and guaranteed infrastructure, or is there some other model which is being considered? So I open that up to all of you.
May I react to this first? Again, I think it's important here to distinguish between EOSC and the EOSC ecosystem again. Kees is also referring to the EOSC portal. The EOSC portal is not run by the EOSC Association, with all respect. The EOSC portal comes from EOSC Hub and is now being run by EOSC Enhance, and maybe in the future by EOSC Future. These are projects, and the EOSC as an ecosystem is being formed but is not existing. That's one remark. So in the EOSC ecosystem there will be services, and we see the portal as a catalog of possible services for the EOSC ecosystem in the future. I'll repeat, we see the portal as a catalog of possible services for the EOSC ecosystem in the future. That means if you talk about the services, they can be free services, and I hope there will be a lot of free services available through the EOSC ecosystem and through the core. I also hope that many organizations will start to offer these services across borders, which is now very often a problem, of course. But it does not mean that there will be only free services working on the EOSC exchange. The EOSC exchange can have free services and services you have to pay for. Apparently, Kees has run across a service being offered by the EOSC portal, again, not the EOSC ecosystem, which is costing money. Whether what it is and why it's costing money, I don't know. And the same for Victoria. The funding depends not on whether EOSC Association or EOSC Core is funded. That depends on the services themselves. The organization offering the services have to see that their funding is secured so they can offer the services in the future themselves. EOSC is not a big thing where all the data and all the services are going to be combined in one big chunk. EOSC is a federated infrastructure, and this federated infrastructure depends on the services offered by the organizations federated. I hope I've made that clear, and I'd like to invite Sarah to complement or contradict if she
not contradict. I think just kind of enhance. So I draw a differentiation between the services that are essentially your core infrastructure that EOSC can't operate without. So like your base level, and you might have seen the diagram where you've got the EOSC core, where we have things like the AAI or PID services that are really critical for everything to operate. And then you have other services. So I don't know exactly what you'd find through the portal, but essentially we have this notion of the EOSC exchange layer where it's competitive services. So you might have multiple ways to compute or multiple analysis tools, and it's really down to the user. There might be some things that they have provided already within their own country, their own institution, their own domain services, or they may pay for certain services. So there, you can't really have an environment where everything's free because there's multiple options. So I think what needs to be kind of centrally funded through the member states is the core that operates and enables EOSC, but you will always have more of a competitive environment where there's a whole range of options because you can't preference one provider over another. It's kind of like, we'll all have lots of broadband choices.
Very good compliment, Sarah. I fully agree with you. So there will be competition between services offered, but the core services have to be for free, and I'm sure we can assure that in the future. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question is an interesting one, and it involves the experience that comes from Robert Hamish, and it's establishing and operating the EOSC is clearly complicated. Do you have any advice for other countries or regions who are considering establishing a similar open science ecosystem? So perhaps we could, maybe Michelle, you could open with this one, and we can offer it to the other two who are. So we have the government, from the Commission, and then from people who are implementing as well.
Well, it's a huge question because, as you know, a research data commons has many dimensions, starting by its governance, its rules of participation, its resources, the nature of its resources being data, services, infrastructures. So it's difficult to answer, Bob, in a nutshell. I think the main elements, I would repeat what I said in my presentation. I think we need really to have an ecosystem approach, which means a lot of linking people and organizations. That's the most difficult issue, I believe, even more than the technical issues. So I would start from there, because if you don't address this properly, then it's very difficult to be successful.
Thank
Nick,
you.
Maybe I can try to answer this with my head on as coordinator of open science in the Netherlands. I'm also the Dutch national coordinator of open science. That's another role than being president of the EOSC Association, of course, but this is directly related to that. And what we're trying to do with the steering group on open science we have in the Netherlands is to combine all people and organizations, exactly as Michelle says, to discuss how are we going to coordinate our activities towards EOSC. Are we going to set up a separate organization? We are now thinking about 3 thematic DCCs, digital or data competence centers, to be organized in our country, one on social science and humanities, one on technical and exact sciences, one on life sciences. And these 3 could jointly form the linking to the EOSC, but it's setting up a similar system combining individuals and organizations. Agree with Michelle.
Thank you, Sarah. I wondered if you had any comments?
Yeah, no, the first thing that came to my mind was don't do it because it's so complicated. But no, on a serious note, I think it's not necessarily like the technology. It is, well, certainly in the European context, it's bringing the people together. It's so difficult to get, a common viewpoint and get consensus. And actually, I think RDA gives us a lot of good models for how you bring a community together and co-build things and get that consensus. And it does take time and it's really difficult. I think that's the harder part about building those ecosystems, understanding the user needs and making sure that that is actually what service providers are delivering on and we're not just all going off on our own tangents. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for your presentations. Clearly, collaboration and people are key to the future of EOSC. Thank you, everyone. I know that Sarah and Carol have to leave for other activities. There will be Klaus Tochterman from the EOSC Association who will be on the final panel session. I'll hand over now to Hilary, who will introduce the study being carried out by RDA on the internationalization. So this important step for the EOSC and a key principle outlined in the SRIA document produced by the governance. So Hilary,
good luck, Hilary, and thank you, Mick. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Carol, Sarah, and Michelle, for the great start to the event. Sorry, it's like multitasking here. It's never easy. To the start of this, and I think it lays a great sort of like, if you like, ground for the next piece of the session, which we will have a little brief interlude for you. We'll break in the middle of this session to give you and the speakers a breather. But so Nick refers to it as my study. Well, my name is Hilary Hanaho, and I'm the Secretary General of the Research Data Alliance. So I actually represent a wonderful community of over 11,500 members. So it's not my study, but it is being done on behalf of the Research Data Alliance, actually our European legal entity. And I will tell you a little bit more about that afterwards in order to not repeat myself. So just for a few moments, I will give you an overview of RDA and the global priorities and the connections between EOSC. Timea Biro from the Digital Repository of Ireland, in fact, will present some of the results from this study that forward, which we gratefully are being funded by the EOSC Association through an open call. And then Mark Leggett, who's joining us from Canada, so the early hours of the morning from Canada, will give an overview into the activities in the groups in RDA about and how that is. And then we'll finish with a question and answers and a Menti meter, which will then set the stage for the next piece. So just a few words on, I'm sure many of you will know, so I won't, but I always start all my presentations, so bear with me with this. But I like to remind everybody of the vision and the mission of the Research Data Alliance, now an 8-year-old organization. When it was set up in March 2013, well, launched in March 2013, it was actually the fruit of a lot of discussions for previous years, and also a project that was funded by the European Commission called Global Data Research Infrastructure. So very interesting origins the Research Data Alliance has, and that was already in 2009 and 2010. And the vision, of course, is that researchers and innovators can openly share reused data across technologies, disciplines and countries to address the grand challenges of society. And so basically, while the Research Data Alliance has a very clear and complex vision, it is also has a very, very broad scope, because we work very much on all the letters of the FAIR and beyond. But of course, interoperability is also a big key for the Research Data Alliance and the activity that is done there. And we, of course, feel that the community can make a significant contribution to the European Open Science Cloud, but not only, of course, other open science clouds or open research commons, open data commons. They have different words in different communities in different regions, and that's fine. We build, of course, the social and the technical bridges, and it was interesting, Sarah's comment, I think it was, that asked about the linking of the people, and also Michelle mentioned it as well, that, people, that one of the key things for the European Open Science Cloud will be these links with people and organizations and things like that. And we ourselves often hear the word trust, and the social aspect is significant in building these relationships and collaborations, and then coupling that with the technical aspect. Yeah. The Research Data Alliance, and I like to highlight and remind you of the guiding principles of that, because in the context of the European Open Science Cloud and other similar initiatives, if you like, they're quite important. So we are based on the fundamental values of openness, and that everything is open, it's consensus driven, it's inclusive, which comes across in many different aspects, not just disciplinary, but gender and, you know, that everybody should have a voice. We try to ensure harmonization. And so we are against the duplication of efforts. That's what we try to be open with. So harmonizing ideas, harmonizing solutions so that actually we can simplify things for the community rather than make them more difficult, shall we say. Community driven, that everything is community driven and that it's not for profit and technology neutral, so that all the solutions that are made available, and they are all freely available, we have over 50 of them now, flagship outputs and recommendations, can be then taken up, adopted, implemented, customized, etc. for the community. So I mean, clearly RDA has, you know, much broader scope than just open science clouds and research commons, but I wanted to highlight two things in the council conclusions that are particularly European focused, if you like. In the council conclusions last year in June, they talked, the statement that stated that open science principles and the Research Data Alliance recommendations are useful for supporting the decision-making authorities in promoting a flexible, common approach for the collection, processing and availability of data. Yeah, so it's a very important recognition, first of all, for the Research Data Alliance, but it's very much in line and a great foundation for, you know, the next steps. And then the other thing, of course, in the Open Science Cloud Partnership is that the Research Data Alliance is recognized in the development of both standards and good practices for managing research data. And in fact, interestingly, in Europe, we have a mechanism in which we can produce and standards. In fact, the Research Data Alliance was set up and modeled on the IETF model for that very purpose. Though we are not a standards body officially, but that it is the structure upon which we were built. So quickly, the RDA for EOSC is, as Nick mentioned at the beginning, it's funded through an EOSC Secretariat open call. It started in the 1st of November last year and will end the end of next month. So it's a very short burst of intensive activity. It's very much in close collaboration with the Work Package 7 of the EOSC Secretariat project, which focuses on international collaboration as well. And it's being led by the RDA Association AASBL in Belgium, based in Belgium, which is the legal entity representing the European community and branch of the Research Data Alliance, but also the Digital Repository of Ireland and the Digital Curation Centre. And basically, in a very short nutshell, it's focused on these 5, if you like, different areas of activity. The disciplinary engagement and the organisational engagement is what Timea Bureau from the Digital Repository of Ireland will focus on now after this. And then we have some work being done by experts to try and understand how domain, you know, some specific solutions also from the Research Data Alliance, the ones I alluded to before, along the lines of standards or guidelines and best practices, could be, you know, supporting now and in the future, of course, to be implemented in EOSC. And then there's another part about the international consensus, which Mark will talk about after this, and how the Research Data Alliance groups and activities there are doing some open work around that, and how that can support EOSC. And EOSC, of course, can support the others, and there can be interoperability and collaboration every step of the way, because of course everybody is at a different stage of their development in these. One thing I would say now is that, of course, there's a big Infra-EOSC 03 project just started on the 1st of April called EOSC Future, which has a certain number of different activities that will be carried out by RDA. And in fact, it's wonderful, because this small study that we're doing in RDA for EOSC will actually sets the groundwork for the work we will then carry on over the 30-month project in EOSC Future. And we're lucky to have the project director of EOSC Future, Ron Decker, with us in the panel, so he can talk about that a bit more. So last slide before I hand over to Timea is, of course, RDA is just one of the many actors doing work in this field, and that can contribute to EOSC, that can bring, if you like, the global and the local and the regional closer together. we have a very long-standing and successful and important collaboration with other organizations, particularly the CODATA, the World Data System, and GoFair. And of course, we have formed this grouping, if you like, together to identify areas where we can synchronize and support for the benefit of the community all our different activities, because while we have similar aims, we do it all from a different perspective and things, and there's very good complementarity there. So we have just issued last month a statement and an outline on fostering cooperation among open science platforms. And Simon Hudson, the Executive Director of CODATA, will join us in the panel afterwards. And he'll, at the beginning, before we start the panel, I've asked him to give a little brief overview of the global open science cloud activity that CODATA is spearheading. So you'll hear more about that. But now I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask Timea to come and join me to talk about supporting disciplinary and organizational engagement in the EOSC. And this is going to be a very whirlwind tour of a very intense and interesting, at least I find it very interesting so far, study that Timea is taking forward on behalf of this study and this little consortium. So thanks, Timea. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hilary. Do let me know if you can see the slides. I'm hoping that, yeah, okay, brilliant. So as Hilary mentioned, I'm going to cover two of the pillars that we are addressing under the RDA for EOSC activity. My name is Timea Bliro. I work for the Digital Repository of Ireland, and we are involved, as Hilary mentioned, in this activity. So I've put in the slides a quote that was taken from the report on the landscape of EOSC-related infrastructures and initiatives. But I'm very happy that Michelle had mentioned this already from a different perspective. That the work that is done around EOSC is not only at national levels and at multi-governmental level, but it's mainly a community-driven activity. And two are, we think, the pillars of this community-driven aspect. One is organizational and one is disciplinary. And that is why we structured the work around these two aspects. So the questions that we have asked were, from an organizational perspective, what should be the focus areas that these actors, so institutions and policymakers, should be looking at in order to improve their engagement with EOSC. The EOSC that is going to come, as Carl said, it's being formed at the moment. And from a disciplinary perspective, how can we best assess the awareness and the readiness of the various disciplinary communities in relation to the EOSC? I'm going to start with the second aspect, so research communities and the EOSC and how RDA can support this activity. So we have an ongoing study that is mapping the state of awareness and readiness of the various domains and disciplinary communities, and with the hope that we will identify those that are underrepresented and also the successful ones in order to understand what would be good recommendations for future engagement. So we have started at, so our basic listing of the disciplinary communities relies on the Frascati categorization. And from the point of view of the indicators, we have leveraged the work of the landscaping working group under the EOSC. So we have tried to define two categories of indicators. The indicators that the landscaping working group has defined are quite extensive, and we have tried to sort of narrow down to a set of categories that are easy to understand and very easy to, or can be easily assessed over time as well. So we have identified two categories: the social enablers, and this might be a term that you are already familiar with, and the technical enablers. So we have looked from the social perspective at roadmaps, open research and research data management policies, training and skills, and consolidated domain and other engagement initiatives that are present in the various disciplinary communities. From the technical side, It's all about, obviously, the infrastructures, its registries and data catalogs, its standards and vocabulary. So it's all about the work around the federation and the interoperability. So this, hopefully, this work, again, is about identifying underrepresented communities and helping them improve their engagement, but it's also hopefully something that can be taken forward under the RDA communities of practice and under the activities of EOSC Future. So bear in mind that this is an ongoing study, but the approach that we have adopted has been that of building an assessment matrix. So for each of these identified disciplines, we are mapping all the presence and all the indicators that that reflect on the six major indicators that we have identified. So we're looking from the technical side at infrastructure presence, activities around federation, and interoperability, because these are aspects that that obviously don't necessarily go in the same rhythm. So you might have the infrastructure in the community, but you might not have the federation, and you might have the interoperability, and again, might not have the federation for it. So you can consider them at different stages or different key aspects of how to build the EOSC and similar data research commons. From the social side, obviously, we're looking at any skills and training programs that are available for these communities, policies and governance. This is more in terms of sovereignty that is inside that community. So are there roadmaps that are specific for them? Are there other things that sort of help from a policy perspective steer that specific community? And obviously all the community activities and the engagement that plays such an important part in this work. So hopefully we can build all these diagrams for the communities that we're looking at and be able to visually easily assess or at least have an idea of where these communities are sort of positioned themselves, and be able to also compare in order to maybe facilitate some lessons from one community to another. This approach, we also hope that is a modular one in the sense that we can build upon it and it can be updated, and that is one of the things that we're looking at in the future. So we hope to collect additional insights from the RDA community representatives. We are planning a webinar as a sort of means of consulting with the community and gathering more insight from the disciplinary groups, as well as the domain ambassadors that have worked under the RDA. Again, if this is something that can be built up in the future, we can also push that forward under the RDA communities of practice and the EOSC Future activities. So we have narrowed down in terms of underrepresented communities. You can see a few of these listed. So we have the wind energy and material sciences under engineering and technology, chemical sciences and biodiversity for the natural scientists, computer and information sciences, and especially the librarianship, archival and information sciences. And we have a particular category, which is the public sector information, open data, and the sustainable development data. This is not necessarily a category that is present in Frascati, and it's not for the lack of awareness that we are looking at them. It's just because these, at least the later groups, are considered non-scientific large data sources that are not, again, that are not scientific, but are of interest to research. I've put in some of the also initial considerations or observations that from the mapping, but I won't go through them. I know that there's a lot of text, but just to highlight, we've realized, and some of these things are maybe everyone is aware of these, but more of the more engaged communities are the ESFRI clusters, but their strength differs. So we have good federation in some of the cases, we have a good diversity of services in other, and we have very strong training and skills for others. Some of the discipline specificities also come through the tailored approaches, like the work that is being done around sensitive and personal data that requires very special attention, and that we see that in the health and the medicine and in the social sciences. There are also disciplinary roadmaps, but it's not a consistent, and it is something that is kind of exceptional across the various domains. So we hope again that this can be further fine-tuned based on input from the community and taken forward in the future under the RDA Communities of Practice and EOSC Future. I will try to now present the other side of the community driven approach that revolves around the organization, and I think both Michelle and Karel mentioned that during the question section of the previous slot. Organizations play a very, very important role, and what we have tried to leverage in this case is RDA's strength and also its willingness to support its organizational membership. And we have asked ourselves what would be the best way to ensure that organizational members and policymakers are supported in their work on open science agenda and their engagement in similar open data common initiatives such as the EOSC. So we have done an initial scoping of these areas. So we've run an initial survey with the RDA organizational members, and you can see there some of their answers. So what would be the key areas that they think RDA can support them with, and based on that, we are and on a set of interviews that we are running with the organizational members, we are trying to provide a series of resources such as policy briefs that the organizational members can leverage, supported with a series of coordination webinars. And we do have already a first policy brief that has been published, and it regards the support to the alignment of organizational research data management policies. This has been a topic that has been identified as a key priority because we have seen that it is a challenge for organizations to align their policies internally based on the diversity of the policies that they have to implement, and also externally because there are challenges in aligning at national level, at disciplinary level, and also at international and European level. We have a set of recommendations that are included in this policy brief, building on experience and input from approaches across other institutions and projects as well. And we are organizing a webinar focused on policy alignment on the 7th of May. And we will have a use case from the HRB that from here from Ireland that will highlight how policy alignment can be done at internal level and also at national level. FairSphere will also have a part in that webinar, and they will speak to us a little bit about their work on policy enhancement. You can find the policy brief and other outputs from the RDA for EOSC project on the page that is you can see on the slide. So there is a page on the RDA website that is focusing on the value of RDA for EOSC. We do have another upcoming policy brief that will focus on training and skills programs and data stewardship, hopefully bringing forward some of the challenges that organizations are addressing. So a breakdown of the problem, but also recommendations and things that organizations can do in order to align and be ready for what EOSC will be in the future. So this is in a very quick nutshell. Some of these are the activities that we have under the RDA for EOSC, focused on the disciplinary engagement and the organizational engagement. So I think that a few of these topics will come up during the panel discussion. So yeah, we look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Timea. We're going, just before we go, I think it's quite a specific question, so I don't know if you're able to answer, but Ron put one in, is data under infrastructure or interoperability in your study?
Sorry?
Is data under infrastructure or under interoperability in your study?
Data as in data catalogs or as in a resource?
Right.
So everything is about data. So it's we do have an indicator that is looking closely at the various catalogs that are available that bring together data sources and help well with the findability and the access.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Timea, but wasn't and you may have said it, so I hope I didn't misunderstand, but is it true that this study and all the indicators, sort of the data that you're collecting, will be made then open and available?
Yes, that is our hope. So we for the time being, it is a spreadsheet, and the visualizations are automatically updated based on the information that is put into the spreadsheet. So we do hope to open that spreadsheet to the community, to the wider community, and well, validate it and also enrich it, because that's the power of such
community. Exactly.
Communities.
Okay. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I'm not sure if I've answered Ron's question. I think he says
data content.
So yes, it depends on how you look at it. So is having a lot of data a plus? Obviously it is, but then you have the smaller communities that are like the social, humanities that have very little data. So it depends on how you estimate that. The indicator was more related to how well fair and interoperable well that content is.
Good. Thanks, Dan. I think Ron seems satisfied, at least for the moment. But okay, so thanks, Timea. Thanks very much. It's very hard to give the essence of that, those two very important pieces of work in such a short time. So I really appreciate it. And of course, there will be the webinar, as Timea mentioned, and also the results will be published by the end of May, when we finish this little piece of work. So now is the time, with 10 minutes a slight delay, to let you have a break. I am assuming that we will come back at 30 minutes past the time. I'm in Central European, so that's 2:30 for me, and wherever else you are, so 30 minutes past. Are we putting a holding slide, Ryan, is that right? Or will I just put one up? Great, thank you very much. So we will see you back here in 10 minutes for the second part of this session and the panel discussion. So my clock says time is up, so we're going to start back again. I would like to ask Mark Leggett to join me on this virtual stage. Federico is going to share his slides for us. Just before I put some of the links into the chat and the date of the webinar, one thing I'd like to say before I move on to Mark's presentation is that I mightn't have been clear enough, but the report and the study that Timea is doing is to identify, of course, these series of communities that are, as we call them, in a traffic light system. So red, yellow and green, they're very aware and very ready and to engage with EOSC. Maybe they're aware but not ready, and then red would be not ready and not aware. And the work then in the EOSC Future project, which we hope that DRI will continue to do for us, is actually to leverage on those different traffic light communities to take the experience from the green ones and help the orange and the red to get engaged, so that by the end of the 30 months, we would have see new communities engaged. But that's more of a disciplinary aspect. Mark is now going to talk to us about the work, the groups inside the Research Data Alliance that are working on Global Open Research Commons, Global Open Science Commons, whatever you like. And I'm very grateful to you, Mark, for representing the group here today. Mark is also a RDA Council member, as well as being the Executive Director of Research Data Canada and one of the co-chairs of the two groups. So I'll leave it to you, Mark, to give the people the overview. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Hilary. And just like to say hi from an early, it's not too early in Canada. It's been 4 a.m. The 4 a.m. days for me the last this week. So I think I'm just going to permanently change my schedule to European time. So I'm going to do a quick update on two of the groups in RDA that are working with stakeholders on the Global Open Research Commons, as we call it. These are the 6 co-chairs, some of whom you've already seen on this call, Michelle and Sarah. Karen Payne, who's the director for the World Data System International Technology Office, Devika at the ISI in India, and Andrew Trelaw, who's at the ARDC in Australia. Next slide. So I should have maybe before coming to this slide highlighted that these efforts haven't just emerged recently. There's a fairly long history in the RDA and CODATA and all the organizations that Hilary highlighted in the Data Together context of talking about global research infrastructures and data sharing. One of the predecessor kind of conversations within RDA was something called the National Data Services Interest Group. And that interest group, which had been going probably close to the beginning of RDA, decided to kind of segue its conversation into the current Global Open Research Commons conversation, which was kind of sparked, I guess, by meetings at the RDA plenary in Barcelona. So again, a number of years of discussion, conversations, and history. So that's resulted in the creation of the Global Open Research Commons Interest Group. The first set of conversations in the GORC context were to try and understand what we meant by commons. The other common term that you'll hear and you can see embedded in EOSC, of course, is Open Science Cloud. So that GORC interest group spent the initial few meetings looking at the definitions and context and what we meant by that. So the remit of the GORC IG is to proactively look outside the RDA community to connect with relevant national, regional, and international initiatives, some of which Timea and the team working on the RDA for EOSC project would also be intersecting with. So basically, you could almost think of it as an umbrella group to discuss and facilitate the efforts of others, including efforts that Simon will mention later coming out of CODATA. Next slide. So after, as my colleague Andrew would say, after many conversations and detailed attention to each word in the definition, this was the definition that was derived for an Open Research Commons, and that is a global trusted ecosystem that provides seamless access to high-quality, interoperable research outputs and services. In other words, a digital research resources for the common good. On the right-hand side of that screen, it's an infographic that was prepared by Alex, who was also key in delivering a great RDA plenary the last 3 days. So many thanks to Alex and Bridget for producing this. So this gives you kind of in a nutshell what the goal of the Global Open Research Commons interest group is all about. And currently, next slide, now that we've kind of centered in on the context and what it means, because that is important as people get engaged in the conversation, to make sure that it's clear what they're talking about. So the next stage, we're focused in more detail on what's called the typology. For those on the call that are familiar with the NIH work in the United States on the data commons, you'll recognize the internal part of this model. That's derived directly from the NIH data commons model. And then on the outside, you see the additional components of governance, sustainability, and stakeholder engagement. I think you can see the intersections with the work that Timea is engaged in, especially in that outer part of the model, and at a high level to kind of get a sense of what engagement is in the broader EOS context in this Open Research Commons landscape. So the current conversation within the GORC is to put more skin on the bones, if you will, in this simple model. We had a call this week. Believe the backup call for non-European friendly time zones is later today, or it may have happened already. I can't remember. With in my Canadian time zone brain, but one of the focus of that GORC interest group meeting at this plenary was to get more feedback from the broader community as to what we might be missing in this model. So with some great discussion, and based on that discussion, the interest group will go back and revise the model and continue to work on reflections and activities associated with this typology and its component building blocks that describe what it means to have a global open research commons. Next slide. So that work is very complementary to, as is the work that Timea and the DRI and DCC RDA teams are doing. More specific effort that was spun out of the GORC interest group is the benchmarking working group. So the first meeting of the benchmarking working group was actually a birds of a feather session at P16, organized by colleagues in Costa Rica last November. This current plenary, there was a meeting of the working group to further discuss the details. There are 3 deliverables defined in the working group. One is a non-redundant set of KPIs and success metrics, currently utilized, planned, or desired for existing science commons. The second deliverable is a list of observable international benchmarks of features, structures, and functionality that help define a commons, and that can help feed into a roadmap of commons interoperability. And then the third deliverable is an adoption plan. Next slide. And I will highlight, you'll notice that the World Data System logo is in the bottom right. And that's because a great deal of the work for this benchmarking working group has been carried out by Karen Payne, who's one of the co-chairs of the interest group, and together with me is co-chairing the benchmarking working group. But certainly Karen and Alicia and other colleagues in the World Data System have done a lot of the work for this benchmarking group. So I do want to highlight the contributions from WDS. So this is simply a reflection of the workflow that is planned. So the work that went into Timea's work and also the GORC, and hence this benchmarking working group in identifying a target list of commons. That initial effort will define a set of a kind of a deliverable and a set of initial benchmarks and KPIs. In that step 3, in generating the list, one of the goals is to have the broader community tell us what they feel appropriate benchmarks or KPIs or functional components are. We had at the plenary meeting this week, we discussed the creation of subtasks or groups to take on the details of this effort. And we decided initially that we would have 2 task groups, one focused on the individual commons, such as EOSC or the AOSP, or regional commons. And this second task group would focus on the typological elements from that model, and kind of tackle it from specific instances as well as a high-level typology to create that list or matrix of individual benchmarks and KPIs. Those task groups will carry out various kinds of research and reviews, collect the benchmarks, produce the proposed set of benchmarks and KPIs that come out of that discussion, and then obviously have outreach with different commons communities, but also actors in the larger data management ecosystem, and from that develop an adoption plan. Next slide. So this is again, Karen and Alicia have drawn up an initial form for collecting benchmarks and KPIs. And based on that form, which was at the plenary meeting this week, we gave the link to the form to colleagues on the call to get their feedback, so that we can polish that up and then start to distribute it to folks in the ecosystem to see what we can do. Ultimately, the goal of all this work, of course, is to create a framework of functional components, again, benchmarks or KPIs, metrics that can be used to determine functionalities across the global Research Commons ecosystem, but also suggest areas of interoperability and review. And our hope is that will feed into some of the other work that's happening, such as the work being done by the CODATA team, colleagues from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and elsewhere that are looking at specific domain implementations and case studies. So as Hilary highlighted in the Data Together context, our hope is that these various organizations will work together in a complementary fashion to facilitate the work of EOSC and other colleagues in this global Research Commons community. And I do like Carol's use of the term EOSC ecosystem. And I do find that his overall kind of explanation of what EOSC is trying to accomplish and how it's manifesting in these different components quite helpful. So it was interesting to hear that. And I think that's it, Federico. I think that's the last, timeline. So this is simply giving an indication of the work that the working group will undertake, and as is the time-honored tradition within RDA, typically working groups have an 18-month life cycle. Those working groups can, of course, redefine their work packages once an 18-month timeline transpires, but our goal is to kind of fit the work into that timeline. So April 2021 is where we are now. And I think Karen did a great job of highlighting what the group is trying to do, and we've put together the kernel of an initial 2 task groups that will move forward and put the details into this benchmarking working group outputs, with the goal of having a final adoption plan and close of the work at RDA 20, which sounds like a long way away, but it's going to come pretty quickly. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much for that and the overview. In a nutshell, it's quite hard to give the context of these, but I don't know if I'll put up the link in a minute to the group as well, the interest group, where then people can get all the information from there. Mark's joining us on the panel afterwards, so we'll keep the questions for that. Timea has kindly prepared a Mentimeter, which we'd ask you to put in. I've put the code into the chat there. Actually, some of the questions, or at least one of them, are also a question that the panel will answer now shortly. I don't want to eat into too much of their time, so hopefully we can speed through these questions. And by the way, if you want to look at the full screen because you can't see, you press the expand button in the corner of the window you wish to see, and it will open up the slides a little bit more. So I'll stay silent for a moment and let you whiz through this, Timea. Thanks.
Thank you, Hilary. So that there are already a few answers. So we wanted to know how familiar you are with Open Research Commons and Science Clouds, and there are quite a few options in terms of the answers. So yes, you're quite familiar if you have heard a lot about them, or if you have been involved in these sort of activities, you might have heard a little bit and know some of the aspects, or you might not be familiar at all, and this sounds like something very new and exciting, or you might find that everything is a bit confusing. So the majority of the people that have answered our quick Menti have heard a little bit about it and know some things, which is very good. A lot of you have been involved, but some of you also find this very confusing. I think that this is very very useful information, just so we understand who's in the audience, and also to give a little bit of a feeling of how things come across. So it's more than fine to be confused. As we've heard many times today, it's something that is being set up, and there are many things to connect, and it's a very vast landscape. So it can be daunting. So if you do know examples of research data commons or clouds, we are curious to see which are those. Most likely the one that you've heard the most is the EOSC, but the important thing is that we would like to sort of highlight is that these can be international ones, but can also be regional and national and disciplinary ones. And I think Mark touched upon that very briefly. So the working groups and the working and the interest group that is under RDA is looking at research data commons, but also from an overarching perspective. So disciplinary ones are also as valid and very interesting. So I see that there are already a few. Shock is a disciplinary one. EOSC, Elixir, the work in Australia. So yeah, a few of these are disciplinary ones. Human Brain Project, that's very interesting. The EOSC is the most commonly mentioned one. Okay, the GOSC. So thank you. This is very interesting. So there is knowledge about these the NIH data commons. Yes. Let's see if there are additional ones coming in. Shock, the EOSC, Elixir. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's try to move on. We do have 2 additional questions. So one of them is, from your point of view, obviously, to try to rate the key benefits of Open Research Data Commons and Open Science Cloud. Whether it's about the wider sharing of the data and the research outputs, the diversity of the services, and the access to specialized ones. Is it the fact that they enhance sharing and reuse, they promote standardized approaches and best practices at disciplinary and cross-disciplinary levels, whether it increases the value of data and its efficiency for economic and social benefits, new incentives and rewards, and the way to assess research, avoid duplication, and also enhance cooperation and boost innovation. So which are the benefits that you think are the most important? So we see that wider sharing of data and other research outputs is in the lead, and while enhanced sharing and reuse is also a key benefit. So is enhancing cooperation and boosting innovation. Avoiding duplication and silos follows after that, and also increasing the value of data efficiency and for economic and social benefits. So all of these are though quite closely rated. The new incentives and rewards and research assessment seems to be the lowest in terms of priorities. And the final question, this is more from an RDA perspective. So we would like you to rate the priorities in terms of areas of alignment and connection between Open Research Data Commons and Open Clouds, where RDA can actually provide input. So is it the policy alignment from an organizational infrastructure disciplinary perspective? Is it just a question of interoperability that is very, very key? From a technical, semantic, and legal perspectives, are there standards and protocols? Oh, there you go. Skills and incentives, a coordinated approach for credits, rewards, and research assessment. I don't think I have skipped one. Yes, supporting awareness raising and international engagement. So standards and protocols seem to be the area, and the best practices seems to be the area where RDA can play an important role. Interoperability as well, support to awareness and international engagement. So you have 2 sort of technical enablers and one more related to the social aspects. Obviously, the policy alignment, which we as well found that is key to support the engagement, skills and incentives, and the coordinated approach to credits, rewards, and research assessment. We have had 29 answers. We will keep the poll open, so feel free to jump in and complete it at any time. I will now pass on to Hilary, because I think that we are slightly late, but I'm hoping that that it's still okay. So thank you very much for all your answers. These will be very, very useful, I'm sure, for our panel coming up next.
Ooh. Thank you, Tamea. So let's see. Many screens. Okay, so the next piece of our, and we're running slightly late, so I'm going to be very quick and ask my presentation mode. Yes, ask my colleagues from the. No, it's gone right back to the beginning. My apologies. So if I could ask Ron Decker, the CESDA ERIC Director, SHOC and the EOSC Future Project Coordinator, Ingrid Dillow, the Deputy Director of DANS, the Fair Project Coordinator, Simon Hodson, who's the Executive Director of CoData and the CoData Global Open Science Cloud Representative, Mark Leggett, who you just saw before, and last but not least, Klaus Tochterman, who's the Director of the ESC Association and also a representative of GoFair on the Data Together group. So I've asked our panel 3 questions, but before I go to the questions, I did want Simon to put it all into context. If you would, Simon, give a couple of brief words about the CODATA's Global Open Science Cloud.
Thanks very much, Hilary. Thanks, everyone. I'm Simon Hodson, Executive Director of CODATA. Also in this context, I think it's important to say I'm the Vice Chair of the Expert Advisory Group of UNESCO, which has been preparing a UNESCO recommendation on open science, which we hope will be adopted by the UNESCO General Assembly in November. Hilary's asked me to give a very quick intro to GEOSC, the Global Open Science Cloud Initiative. And I want to stress that this is something which is complementary to and which will collaborate closely with the RDA groups which have been mentioned and described by Mark earlier. Some very quick background. CODATA, like the World Data System, is an organization which was established by the International Science Council. And we exist in part to serve the mission of the International Science Council, which is to advance science as a global public good. Within the ISC, the International Science Council's action plan, which has that title, Advancing Science as a Global Public Good, there are 2 objectives, among many others, but 2 objectives which address open science. One, to promote open science more broadly, and the other to ensure and to encourage the development of open science platforms, clouds or commons, globally. And there are 2 drivers for that. Firstly, to avoid that the Global South is left behind in relation to these developments. And secondly, to avoid silos between the various national or regional open science initiatives. So for a number of years, CODATA has been involved in initiatives to those objectives. We've been involved in the pilot project to develop a vision for and to establish a coordinating activity towards an African open science platform. That pilot project was successful in ensuring commitment from the ISC and from the South African government, and an office is being set up to perform that coordinating function. We've also been engaging very closely with the Malaysian Academy of Sciences and their activities to develop a Malaysian open science platform, and we've been advising on that, with an objective as well, hopefully, of expanding that initiative to the ASEAN region. So the GEOSC has a shared origin with the GORC, with the RDA groups, in that CODATA was involved in these activities, which I've mentioned, and in a number of the BOFs and workshops, which Mark illustrated. We held, in collaboration with a number of people who are involved with the GORC activities, a series of workshops at the CODATA 2019 conference in Beijing. That led directly to funding from the Chinese Academy of Science for a project to encourage stepwise cooperation, alignment, and ultimately interoperability on various levels between these sort of initiatives. So we're starting with that project funding, but it's a broader initiative, and we hope to bring in other resourcing very quickly. And we're in discussion, for example, with the Malaysian Academy of Sciences for them to contribute to a specific work package in the initiative, and our good links with the African Open Science Platform. We hope to bring them in, and other initiatives as well. One of the objectives, of course, is to, as I said, encourage cooperation, alignment, and ultimate interoperability between such initiatives, and in particular with initiatives that are going on in Europe and with EOSC. I'll briefly outline the activities which we'll be involved with, or which we'll be taking forward, and which will align with the GORC. So imagine, if you will, a matrix. We are setting up 4 thematic working groups. One to look at issues of governance, one to look at issues of policy alignment, one to look at the issues of technical infrastructure alignment, and of course, semantic interoperability for data. And then cross-cutting with those, we're setting up for case studies on particular research areas and to understand how data sharing, interoperability can work between or among these initiatives. Those areas we'll look at in ascending order of difficulty. Incoherent scatter radar data, a work package on ecology and biodiversity data, another work package looking at data, particularly remote sensing data, but not exclusively, for SDG 13, climate change and disaster risk reduction, and then finally the most challenging, population health data and clinical data. We'll be launching this with a virtual workshop in June. There'll be hybrid workshops with our partners in various locations, but in particular with the Chinese Academy of Sciences in September, and there'll be sessions at SciDataCon and International Data Week in November. And throughout that, we'll be collaborating closely with the RDA groups, which have been mentioned. Mark is on our steering committee for the GEOSC, so we're ensuring good communication between the two initiatives.
Thank you, Simon, for that. Yes, I know in a whirlwind tour of the GOSC, but I think it's good to set so it's clear, and there should be all those links as well. Are they on the CoData site, and we can drop them into the chat and follow up afterwards. So I asked the panel 3 questions. We'll start with the first one, which was actually those of you who completed the Mentimeter, your last one. But though they haven't been given the list of choices, so they can answer how they like. So the question was, if you had to pick one area to focus on for prioritization over the coming years, what is it, and how can you see RDA supporting that? And I'd like to start with Ingrid, if it's all right, ladies first. Can I ask you to give us your thoughts on that, Ingrid?
Sure, you can. Can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Great. So when I got this question, thing that came to my mind was a promotional video that I saw the other day with messages from the members of the EOSC governance bodies. And in that video, they were asked, and Ron was one of them, what does EOSC need? And one of the answers was engagement with research communities. And I think that relates very much to the stakeholder-driven approach that Michelle was talking about earlier on. And I very much agree with that, because I'm still sure that the majority of European researchers has not yet heard of the term EOSC. Now, of course, we can think that that is not maybe a big issue, because, you know, this will, in all honesty, be the federation of existing infrastructures and services and data. But on the other hand, if we envisage EOSC to be the web of fair data and services, then it, I think, should worry us that, and this is from a survey that we did within Fairs Fair, that in Europe only 5% of the university researchers has a high awareness of the FAIR principles. So the engagement with research communities should be would be the first one, I think, of my priorities for the coming years. I think we need to make sure that the researchers, the communities, get a bigger voice. And we need to make sure that their needs really become the starting point for our service development. Because up to a certain point, these needs can be generic, but then we also need to be aware that a lot of it is more domain specific. Mm-hmm. So in that engagement, we should also, I think, not forget the long tail of researchers, the ones who are not part of the big European ERICs, which is even a bigger challenge, I guess. Mm-hmm. Now, next to that awareness raising and engagement aspect of researchers, I think that we also need to make sure that we enable the research communities to embrace the FAIR principles in their practices. And to throw in some more numbers, we also know that 50% of the researchers have the feeling that they need more guidance in order to be able to write good data management plans. And 60% of them say that they do not get enough credit for data sharing. So there are lots of hurdles, practical hurdles that we need. And I think that really relates very much to the work that Timea was talking about in getting a feeling of the maturity of those different communities. So that is my first priority. I have another one, if I may, And that was also mentioned in this interesting video, and that was long-term commitment. And my second priority would very much be related to that, because I think that we need to make sure that we not only make data fair in the EOSC, but also that we keep them fair over time. And I think the importance of long-term preservation of data and the stewardship of data has been acknowledged very much in all kinds of policy documents, ranging from the Turning Fair into Reality one, also the more recent SRIA document. But on the other hand, we also see that in practice, little progress has been made in that area, and not a lot of funding has gone to that. And to me, it sometimes really feels like the hot potato that is being shoved from plate to plate, because it involves a lot of it's a costly exercise. So we haven't seen a lot of work, and that needs to change. I think we need to change that and tackle that challenge if we want our investments in fair data to last over time. So in that sense, I, for one, was very happy to see that we will have a new EOSC task force in this area. And I also think that organizations like specifically RDA and WDS have a lot to bring to EOSC for these topics. Thank you.
Thanks, Ingrid. So we lost Klaus, but he's back. But thankfully, Ingrid had two, Klaus, research community engagement, but then long-term commitment. So I like that one, make and keep data fair, yeah. Ron, I'm going to go to you next, if that's okay. Then I'll go to Klaus, but the others have spoken, and then I'll come around to Mark and Simon then.
Okay, can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes, okay. I would say COVID, because I want to be live at the RDA plenaries, because I think that is one of the strengths of RDA, where we have 11,000 members. You have 11,000 members, and I think with this critical mass, let the topics come up by by all these members, and rather than decide top down what should be the topics. I think the strength of RDA is the bottom up process. Another one, if you take FAIR seriously, and we talk about accessibility for humans and machines, perhaps machines should be able to become a member of RDA. And of course they pay in Bitcoins. And but I think we have to pay more attention to what the machines can do. As for me, the only way to deal to capture with the exponential growth of data, of information, is to get the machines in. So thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Gosh, that's a very interesting challenge. But machines as members of RDA.
You would be the first to have machines as members.
There you go. Klaus, what are your thoughts on this? Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the first topic which came up to my mind was, of course, also technical challenges, because I'm a computer scientist. So standards and interoperability, which were also ranked number 1 and 2 in the Mentimeter poll. Still, after thinking a little bit, I changed my mind, and I think the most important topic is still community involvement. So I completely agree with Ingrid, because when I give presentations and talks, often the people do not know what EOSC is, what the GEOSC is. So here we are still in a bubble. And also, you know, the Mentimeter poll should have posed to those who are not here. You know, I was not very much surprised by the results, because here the community is very familiar with all the aspects, like technical challenges. But those who are not here, you know, we have to reach out to those. And I think, so how can RDA support that? I very much like the RDA for EOSC activity funded by the Secretariat project. It's too bad, too unfortunate that it ends already end of next month. But they are the pillar number 4, identifying and prepare new scientific and research communities to engage with EOSC, are super important. to promote community involvement. And as you said, Hilary, earlier, RDA is not alone in the world. We have the other activities, GoFair, WDS, CoData. And this is, as you know, why we have founded the Data Together initiative. And I think we should also liaise with these activities to further engage with the communities. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Well, just, I did say it, but it mightn't have been clear. So yes, in one way, it's unfortunate the RDA for EOSC is finishing, but actually under the guidance of Ron Decker and a huge consortium of people in the EOSC Future project, we will actually continue it on. And our aim is to interact directly with these communities and provide the toolkits and the support so that actually, as I said, we can help these increase this very low number that Ingrid was referring to, and more besides. Mark, would you like to say something from your Canadian perspective or global? And then I'll give the last answer to this question to Simon.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Every time I considered the question, that I always came back to the concept behind the link. I just put in the chat, which is a white paper that was submitted to the new DRI organization in Canada called Interface Matters by Jeffrey Antoniuk and Susan Brown, who are both key digital humanities scholars in Canada. And for me, what this essentially boils down to is when I, as a researcher, can go to the EOSC or Global Open Science Commons or Cloud interface, put in my ORCID ID, and immediately have a populated interface with connections to collaborators and compute resources and data repositories that synchronize with my research interests, then I think we will have reached our first stage of success and the most important stage of success, which is making all of these complex actors and this community or ecosystem, as Carl says, actually accessible to the average researcher. And I think that's the part. I've been working in this community for 40 years, and I think that's the part that we continually miss, is how to really be accessible to researchers and facilitate their work. So that's what I would suggest. So it's worth a read.
Thank you. And Mark has dropped that link in. Simon.
Thanks, Hilary. In my view, there are two key drivers for these sort of initiatives. One is the need to facilitate what Ron was driving at, the increased access, programmatic access to data, access to machines, fair for machines, and ultimately the Internet of fair data and services. But why? Why do we want that? There is a reason for wanting to facilitate that large-scale access to data by machines, that programmatic access. And that's because the major challenges of our time, whether they're COVID or climate change or the growth of cities, et cetera, these grand challenge research areas precisely need cross-domain research. They need data from many different sources, and they need the ability to model and analyze those data effectively at scale. So I think that's, what we're driving at, and everything we can do to support those objectives and those drivers within open science clouds and platforms should be among our priorities. The coda to that is that this has to be global. It has to be international, because all of those challenges that I mentioned are global challenges. And that's why I think it's incumbent upon RDA, CoData, the other Data Together organizations to make sure that this is a global issue. The EOSC is a fantastic initiative, and I very much, hope that we can learn from that globally, that there are lessons to be drawn. But it's important that we address these initiatives in other parts of the world as well, and make sure that we're joined up and not creating silos.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, so that kind of segues actually into the next question quite well, your last piece on that about the global, no? So how can all of us, and not just the co-daters and the data togethers, but everybody who has some sort of a commitment and stake in this, ensure that the EOSC, and we're just using EOSC because that's what this is, the more the focus of this particular workshop, but in itself doesn't become a silo, because we could also get into trouble there. So I'm going to ask you, Klaus, if I may kick off with you on this question, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hilary. So I don't fear that risk, frankly, because the EOSC is a federation of existing repositories. And around these repositories, we do already have well-established communities. The challenge is to build up a community of communities, which is the EOSC community. And the worst case which could happen, I think, is that the EOSC is just or serves just a group of isolated communities. But again, here I would go back to the objectives of the EOSC, which is also to support cross-disciplinary research. For example, behavioral economics, there you need research data from psychology, from economics to answer research questions. And I think the challenge here again is how can we build up cross-disciplinary communities. One instrument is the advisory groups which were presented by Sarah, because they are we take diversity in the discipline into consideration. But again, we only reach out to those who are already kind of familiar with the EOSC developments. And we would again need to involve also the other stakeholders, the communities of the repositories, which are using their disciplinary or institutional repositories without knowing what's going on in EOSC. And again, RDA has the great community. You mentioned that 11,000 individuals from 146 countries. I think here we somehow need to capitalize on this great community we have.
Thank you, Klaus. Ingrid?
Yeah, I think that segues nicely into the answer that I would like to give to this question. And I was invited here, I think, also with my FAIR project head on. So I would like to talk really from ground floor practice here. I think if the current pandemic has shown us one thing, it is that we need to work together really in a global context if we want to address the challenges that the world is facing. And I also think that RDA and the other partners in the Data Together initiative really are at the heart of that international collaborative aspect of facilitating. And therefore, I think that interactions like the ones between RDA and the EOSC are critical to make sure that we create solutions in Europe that are aligned with and are compatible with developments elsewhere in the world. But also the other way around, we can bring our European solutions to the global table in RDA to avoid reinvention of wheels. So in practice, I think that means that EOSC-related activities need to be in contact with relevant groups and activities of that worldwide RDA community. So how does that work in practice? And let me zoom in there a little bit on the connections between RDA and the FAIR project, because I think there are multiple ways in which that kind of cross-pollination can work. So, for example, you can build on work that has been done in RDA and that has a kind of international consensus underneath it. For example, we use the FAIR data maturity indicators that were developed under the umbrella of RDA as a basis for our Fuji automated tool for FAIR data assessment. So a real connection there. But we also use the RDA as an international sounding board to validate recommendations and solutions that we were thinking of in the project, for example, around semantic interoperability work. And we also supported and expanded existing work of RDA and CoData in the form of the RDA CoData summer schools, where FAIR supported, for example, the extension of the summer school with a strand data stewardship. So in all of these ways, I think we can really shape that cross-pollination that is really essential in making sure that EOSC does not become a silo.
Thank you, Ingrid, and thanks for giving a few of the examples there. It was nice to hear them. Simon?
Thanks, Hilary. The quick answer is through engagement with other international initiatives, of course. The role of the Data Together organizations, and in particular alignment between what GORC is doing and what GOSC is doing, and engaging that with EOSC. I think I saw a nice comment in the chat in the previous session about referring to Voltaire's comment about the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, which was certainly not holy. It wasn't just Germanic. It wasn't Roman in any juridical sense, and politically and juridically, it was arguably not an empire either. And the same applies, I think, to the ethos in which we think about EOSC. Yes, there's a European driver. Yes, we want open science, and yes, the cloud platform will be will support that. But it shouldn't just be that. It should be Europe plus. It should deal with not just data that can be open, but data that has to be protected. It should be science in the very broadest sense, the Latin sense, or research if we must, and it should look at all necessary platforms. There's a reason for that, which I think Ingrid expressed extremely well. It's essential that EOSC engage with international standards and protocols as they emerge, and it's to the benefit of Europe, and it's to the benefit of the world if European innovations can be communicated, adopted, and we can encourage that stepwise approach, cooperation, alignment, interoperability.
Thanks, Simon. I must have missed the comment on Voltaire, and I'll have to go back through the chat before, but Ron, what do you say?
Yes, thank you. I think we must realize, and we must go for that, EOSC is not about Europe. It is global, and EOSC is not about member states or the ESFRIs. Yes, ESFRI institutes, there are 55, but the landscape study of EOSC showed that there are more than 6,000 national and regional infrastructures in Europe. We need to engage them as well. We need to bring in the researchers as well. And yes, EOSC is not about the cloud either. Yeah, for me, EOSC is about connecting data and tools, but also connecting people and connecting institutions. And this must be done right from the start, right from the beginning. And I really welcome these global initiatives to look further than EOSC, to look to what's happening in Australia, in the North Americas. So for me, it is this inclusiveness that is important. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Mark, last but not least.
I would say RDA is the perfect has the perfect alignment with the EOSC initiative, and it's reflected in its governance structure and approach. So from the grassroots represented in the groups, and the organizational assembly with the organizational members, the regional assembly with regional members, and the funders forum with traditionally national or private philanthropic funders. So when you kind of look at that alignment with the EOSC model and the way that RDA can engage at all of those levels, I think that's a critical advantage and opportunity for EOSC and RDA to facilitate the work of EOSC. So I would simply point to RDA's structure model.
Very good, thanks. Okay, I'm going to be, we've 5 minutes left, and I do have to, I think that it actually closes the meeting room. So, and anyway, I know it's been a long week for many of you. So I'm going to ask you all, you have 1 minute to give me the answer to the last question. And I know it's a complex one, but I'm going to start with Simon because he told us that, and I gave the example of UNESCO, and he told us that indeed he is the vice chair of that recommendation that's coming out. So how do we ensure, you know, that policies are aligned? Because there are many, we know, and it's very complex, this ecosystem. And policy alignment is less business, core business for RDA, by the way, but it is by de facto. It's a more core business, I think, Simon, for you. But you can kick off with a very brief answer to that question, and I'll run around my screen as I see you for the answers to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very brief on this one. I think the UNESCO process has been a significant global consultative process. There was the UNESCO Secretariat fielded a set of inputs from member states, of course, but also from stakeholders. That went down to June. Then our expert advisory group started drafting a first draft that was completed at the end of September. That went into the UNESCO mix as it went out to the member states. We got feedback. We revised it. I think that was completed by the end of February or something. I forget. It's been a busy process. And now that is being looked at by UNESCO lawyers and in even more detail by the member states. What will come out of it, I think, will remain a relatively robust statement in favor of global open science. And so, in blunt terms, this is a global UN system UNESCO process. There is little more authoritative in terms of soft law and direction for member states. So the blunt answer is the member states have been consulted, they've inputted into this, scientific communities have been consulted and they've inputted into this. Adopt those principles and put them into national policies. What we can do in this group is to try and ensure that those policies are adopted to the greatest extent possible by the initiatives that we're talking about, by the European Open Science Cloud, etc., and that those initiatives are the infrastructure and community enablers of the implementation of that policy directive.
Thanks, Simon. So you're making a case for they should be the sort of the core and everything from that. So that's interesting piece perspective and piece of advice too. You know, take that one. It's already been well consulted, and you're right. I mean, I suppose everybody has had a chance to see it or provide feedback on it. Klaus, if I go clockwise around my screen, you're next.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my fear also that will have too many recommendations for alignment. So we need an alignment of alignments, and for that purpose we need some supranational body. I'm not sure whether UNESCO or a legal entity is the right place where to bring together all these activities. I would very much see the researchers being involved, not only in the sense that they are organized by some UNESCO groups, but they drive the alignment. And again, like RDA, Data Together, Go Fair, all these groups, they can form such a body consisting of researchers from all over the world who take care of the alignment.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Klaus. Ingrid, you're next.
Yes, thanks, Hilary. I'll try to keep it short and sweet and zoom in on, take it from Klaus with a focus on the researchers and zoom in on the function of RDA there. For me, the main function of RDA is really the community-driven platform function. And I think in that role, RDA can be used and already is used, of course, as an instrument for aligning in different ways. First of all, as the cradle for principles and standards that have a global consensus on which you can then align policies and practices around the world. And I think that was really nice yesterday in the keynote by Susan Gregorick. And the second is of function of that platform is also, I think, increasingly a different way, and also it's being used by different stakeholders, namely policymakers and funders, to exchange developments and best practices in policies, like you see happening in the funders IG, like the work on the GORC. So I think those two platform functions, Cradle for Principles and Standards, but also the platform for policymakers and funders to meet and discuss, really are instrumental for the international policy alignment that we need.
Thank you, Ingrid. Mark?
I would agree with, I would combine Simon and Klaus's suggestions and say that if we take the UNESCO document, which is a brilliant piece of work, I don't think we need to duplicate that, and have some way in a national context of having researchers sign the UNESCO pledge that they feel that this is a great example of how the researchers can benefit from a strong policy framework from the various levels in their national context. I think that would be one way to combine the two interests. It is a great document, and I really don't think we need to go and start getting it again.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Ron, you are the future of EOSC, if I can have that fun, and the EOSC future director. So I'll give you the last word.
Oh gosh, the final word. I want to add on what Ingrid said, and I think to have this alignment, you must have some common understanding about your goals, about your starting points. And I think in this, the work that Mark and his colleagues are doing in GORG is fabulous. That's one. Second, I think best practices will develop and participation will come if there is sustainability. Partners, whoever, need to be pretty sure that it will stay on for say at least 10 years. So this sustainability is important. And finally, sometimes you must be lucky. I want to give one example of the EC program on science clusters. It was a call with 5 different science clusters. And of course, yes, we started as 5 different ones. But now, 18 months later, we have regular meetings of these science clusters and start working together. And sometimes you must find this click that it works. And even if there is not an additional program or no additional budget, people will find each other. And again, here is the platform of RDA incredibly important. To be this matchmaker where institutions can meet and find each other. I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I hope that between now and November we'll have more discussions and webinars. There'll be different pieces around this, and as I said, we're publishing the results in May, and we've already started in EOSC Future, but the work will continue on. I say November because we have this wonderfully exciting event planned for the last number of years, and we're very much hoping it will be a hybrid event together with our partners, CODATA and WDS, International Data Week, which not just has the wonderfully exciting RDA and the excellent SciDataCon, but they're all combined together. So fingers crossed that from the 8th to the 11th of November, we will actually have an in-person event with a virtual component. If that doesn't happen, we'll go fully virtual. But so I will stop it there 3 minutes after, and thank you all and the previous session speakers. So Michelle, Carol, Sarah, Timea, and Federico and Nick for organising it, and Trust IT and the EOSC Secretariat. It's very much appreciated. And we've plenty of food for thought now to go forward and see how we can build on some of those suggestions that you made. So thank you very much. And I, for one, am looking forward to this weekend. I'm sure the rest of you are. So goodbye and thanks. There we go. Thank you. See you next week.